Wasteland, an Immigrant Rights Podcast. This is your host, Mark Schmorley, and it's been a couple of weeks. My mom passed away, and she was 92 years old, lived a great long life, but as you can imagine, it's been uh, busy and grieving and all that. So I just wanted to do a short just update to say that we are still here, and we have many things planned. And I know it's also Holy Week for Christians. Ramadan just ended for Muslims, and of course it's Passover for we Jews. So I'm attending my Seder tonight, and so happy um, uh, belated Ramadan for folks. I did get to partake in some activities there. I had a good uh, iftar, and it was nice. It was nice, and group one, which was really nice, and of course, uh, uh, I'm having a Seder tonight for Passover, so that's all good. So, but I wanted to just I'm also uh, going down to the Supreme Court to a rally because today is the case before the Supreme Court on birthright citizenship, which will update you on Monday. I'm going to listen to the arguments, read, and see what happens. But basically, this case is not to decide whether and what's happened is the Trump administration has uh, uh, put an executive. The president has issued an executive order stating that people who are born to both parents need to be United States citizens, and or one of them needs to, and that isn't contrary in to that's contrary to the uh, Constitution and to Supreme Court precedent before, which states that if you're born in the United States, you are an automatic citizen. And we talked about that. You are a citizen of the United States. And we talked about that with Ted Gong in our two-part interview before. We talked about the origins of that and the role, obviously, of the Chinese community because um, that was a Chinese immigrant's case at the Supreme Court in the late 1800s. So we're going to talk about this case on Monday. We're also going to talk about some of uh, the in our series of how foreign policy how uh, affects immigration. And one of the topics that I've been looking into, and I'm going to probably do a Substack on, is uh, the what they call the push pull factor uh, in the traditional way that we were taught um, U.S. history and even politics and how people talk, and the way that you all know that I really really believe is harmful to our understanding of uh, immigrants, immigration, and I consider it like dehumanizing language in a lot of ways, push pull factors, and looking at people like they're economic tools often with immigration. And this happens all the way through. Like, we need workers, we need, it's like, okay, um, that means that when historically, an example in the 1920s when the Depression hit the United States and there were a lot of Mexican workers here, they mass deported them, including people born here, people who were U.S. citizens, deported them to Mexico because, you know, um, there was a massive, work glut per se. And so it's always the thought of when there's economic bad times, you blame the immigrants because they're the ones using the resources. They're the ones, and we talked about that with Pastor Chitwood last time, who explained like the Tennessee law where they want to um, block students from attending public school based on immigration status, or as modified, they just want to know about them, or in the Supreme Court case of Plyler versus Doe, which is from the early '80s, which was 5-4 Supreme Court. Texas tried to charge um, unauthorized, undocumented students from uh, their families. If they were in public school, and the Supreme Court said no, anybody, uh, school age kids or school age kids, that immigration status doesn't matter. And so, uh, these are the things that foreign policy can lead to the bigotry there. Like I think that hinges on some of the earlier notes of like what that immigrants need to be economically prosperous, and they're going to have some weird way to decide that. Um, and so we'll get into that. And of course, the elephant in the room, the attempt by the administration to start a world war, which we're reading today that if the United States attacks, with soldiers on the ground in Iran, that the Chechnyan uh, militias will join, and they are, of course, Chechnya is a, a what was they call a breakaway republic or group that wanted an independent state within Russia in the throughout the late 90s or 2000s, and the Russians defeated them. And so they're part of Russia, and they also though are very Russia's also very sympathetic to Iran and an ally, and they will and the Chechen militias are known for their fierce fighting. So as we are entering that, it certainly does affect immigration. It affects immigration from the political grounds we've talked about at the beginning. The Ramisa Ozturks and others who are going to speak out, but they're not U.S. citizens. The loyalty stuff that's been going on, and also just in general, the ability to enter the United States is when you're at war. You have to, especially you're going to have people who um, are going to try to enter who are not sympathetic from other countries. So we've already seen um, this happening. So we're going to talk some. Of course, that's an elephant in the room. We're going to talk about, and also so I think since we've last talked, the Department of Homeland Security has a new director, former Senator from Oklahoma, Mark Wayne Mullen. A man who's never run anything more than his family plumbing company, which is you're running a business. It's no shade on that. It's as qualified as, no shade on that. But there's also no executive experience and nothing to do in his life with Homeland Security, immigration, no background, and also just not we'll see. But we expect, a lot of the same things that happened under Nome. We expect probably a little bit more careful in the media. And so the question there is, again, is it, does it take the murders in Alex Preddy and um, is good there in uh, Minnesota to get into the national headlines to take like it did in 2018, the kids in cages? Yes and no, because it was those kids in cages, as Josh Rubin from who was one of the founders of Witness at the Border. Maybe it was his idea. I don't remember, but I know he's one of the founders who said, one of my favorite quotes: "I was tired of watching the TV and wanting to throw a shoe at it." So he did something, and so we see that now. And this might be something coming out of these, no kings marches, these protest marches. It can't, we're not going to be successful if we just oppose Trump and realize the insanity of where he is. But when we hit the roots of how we got here, when we build a movement, that's what's going to be there. When we talk, when our neighbors are consistent, and what's going on right now, I mean, with Kristi Noem, it was easy because she was so overt about her, one, corruption, and two, showmanship. And so it was in the media a lot. And Greg Bovino was out there with his SS um, uh, styled jacket walking around. And when you have that, yeah. But when you quietly do it, it gets out of the news, and it's there. There's still so many things happening to repress immigrants, to keep them detained. People are dying in detention. The conditions are horrific. The human rights violations happening under our, you know, under our skin, under the within our states, but they're in prisons that people don't see, and so this is something that we're going to continue to talk about with the activists that are out there, with the experts that can help to us make sense of it. And I've got a list of some great guests that are coming up. I look forward to talking, bringing some new episodes in the next couple of weeks. Thank you again for your support. Thank you for tuning in. And thank you to our producer, Stephanie Buatois, and Jeff Barsky and Pete Kovitz for your great music. Jeff is taking off. He's playing around the country when he's not teaching. I think he might be rehearsing with his fourth graders. I don't know. And Pete also with his high school kids. What's up with these teachers? My world of they're both um, uh, they're both friends of mine. They're both great musicians, and they're both and I I'm really thankful that they've loaned me their music, loaned us their music, and um, again, happy Easter to all of you. Holy Week, belated Ramadan for everybody, and of course, for me and my people, happy Passover, and may justice prevail.